The flowers are blooming, the birds are chirping, my allergies have knocked me on my ass more than once, and there's a swarm of bumblebees outside of my apartment trying to get in every chance they get. Spring has truly sprung. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome back to my kitchen for another video. Today we're doing something that I haven't done yet on this channel, which is scones. Sometimes when I'm coming up with recipes to make for you guys, instead of leading with the recipe, I lead with the ingredients. So instead of saying, I want to make a tart today, I'm like, I have all of these lemons and I need to figure out how to use them. This video came about kind of similarly. I've started going back to the market near me, like the farmer's market that we have on Saturdays. And the last two times I've gone, one of the stalls has just had hordes of strawberries. So many super ripe, gorgeous strawberries. I picked some up and I was like, I need to do something with these. It's April now, so I believe that strawberries are like in season like this month and potentially next month. Either way, strawberries are in season right now. Originally, I wanted to make a strawberry rhubarb pie because I realized I don't have any pies on my channel, but I think I'm a little too soon for rhubarb. It comes in season this month, so I might have to wait like a week or two to get my hands on some. So I picked up a couple of these little, so I picked up a couple of baskets. Oh my God. So I picked up a couple baskets of strawberries and I was thinking about how to use them. Admittedly, strawberries are not my favorite thing to bake with. They have such a great flavor on their own. As soon as you go to bake with them, they're really, really wet. It impacts the texture of your baked goods. They can go soggy if you're trying to keep them whole and the texture's just not great. And they also really go gray really, really easily. Strawberries do not retain their color once you bake them. It's kind of like trying to bake with a watermelon. Like it's just mush, there's nothing there. So I decided that I wanted to do something with roasted strawberries. Roasting fruit is really, really easy and does not take a lot of time. When you roast your fruit, kind of cover it in a little bit of sugar, pop it in the oven. It enhances the flavor and kind of concentrates the flavor and gets rid of some of the excess moisture that you have in the fruit. You know how when you make like jams and stuff like that, you lose a lot of the water and what you're left with is kind of like a mega concentrated version of the flavor. It's just like that, except you're keeping the fruit like whole for the most part. You're not mushing it down. I have not done scones on this channel. I think scones can easily be really bad and so people don't like to make them because sometimes they can be dry and crumbly and kind of gross. So they get kind of a bad rap. We're not making bad or gross scones today though. We're making roasted strawberry and basil scones. I'm gonna get the rest of my ingredients over to the bench and we will get started making these scones. So before you do anything with roasted strawberries, you do in fact have to roast your strawberries. So I have mine here. They're roasted and cooled. I have them right here. This is a 1.5 cups of whole and quartered strawberries. So basically I just like took the stem off, quartered them and measured them that way. And basically you just toss them with some sugar. It's usually about 1 tablespoon per cup of fruit is usually the guideline that I go off of. So if I'm doing strawberries or blueberries or blackberries or anything like that, I usually do 1 tablespoon of sugar per cup of fruit. One thing that is like super important to keep in mind is fruit is gonna release a lot of juice, especially if you're gonna make more than 1.5 cups of fruit. So I have my parchment on this sheet tray like hanging over all 4 sides. And that's just to make cleanup a lot easier. If it's just on the bottom, that's fine, but the juice is gonna kind of run off and go underneath your parchment and then it's gonna caramelize and it's gonna get sticky and you're not gonna wanna clean that up. So just put more parchment than you think you need. Lay your fruit out in a single layer and bake it at 375. It takes about 20 minutes-ish to get dark and roasted and release a lot of the juices. You can go a little bit longer than I did if your berries are like particularly juicy. Some of my fruit was starting to catch and I didn't want it to get like any darker, so I went ahead and pulled it. What's happening is the sugar that you put on there is gonna start like macerating it essentially Sugar is hygroscopic, so it pulls moisture out. So you're kind of caramelizing your berries and pulling out a lot of the moisture and getting like a nice deepened flavor. I kind of go in every 10 minutes or so and kind of push them around and like rotate them and stir them on the sheet tray. You're not trying to like do much of anything, but the top layer can dry out. So just kind of moving everything around, making sure everything gets a chance to get equally roasted. Pull it out of the oven once you are sufficiently satisfied. For me, like I said, it took about 20 minutes. And then it's really important that you let them cool on the sheet tray. I don't want you to hurt yourself or burn yourself trying to take anything off the sheet tray while it's still hot. So you can go ahead and just let them cool on the sheet tray. We don't need these just yet, so I'm going to move them. So you want to make sure you roast your berries first. I like to do it like 45 minutes to an hour before I'm ready to start assembling stuff. With a scone or a biscuit or a shortcake or anything like that, a lot of it is really temperature sensitive, so you want to make sure you get them cooled completely before you move on. So in this really large bowl, I have my dry ingredients, I have my flour, the rest of my sugar, baking powder, and salt. So I'm just gonna give that a good little mix. Making scones is like, I mean, it's pretty much like making biscuits, obviously, but it's also kind of like making pie dough if you're more familiar with pie dough. So everything is temperature sensitive. So this is my butter that I already cut into pieces, basically to make sure that I'm handling this as little as possible. And it goes into the dry ingredients as cold as possible. I like to cut my butter up and then put it back in the fridge and then just leave it in there until the absolute last possible second. So that way it stays cold. Pie dough and biscuits and scones and things that are like physically leavened, that butter piece in there is gonna melt in the oven. But you want it to melt after your dough has started to cook. I hope that makes sense. I can explain that in greater detail, maybe get a whiteboard back here. So I'm just popping my butter in here. You can use a pastry cutter here if you've got hot hands. Some people also use food processors, which is a really good idea because it cuts the butter up small and you don't even have to touch it at all. I don't have a food processor, so we're not gonna do that. So I'm just gonna go in, and I usually like to do like a little preliminary squish of all the butter pieces. Everything's covered in flour. So now that everything's flattened, I'm just gonna kind of keep rubbing the butter into the flour mixture and trying to work kind of quickly. So you want to work in the butter until you want like kind of significant butter pieces left over. We're gonna go for like dimes or rather large peas. And I'm honestly working quickly and just kind of going like this with my hands. One thing you can do too, if you're worried about it, if you have hot hands, or just in general, you feel like you've had this out too long and you're kind of worried that your butter is getting too soft. Once you get to this stage and you feel like you're done, you can throw the whole mixture back into the fridge, and that will re-solidify your butter before you add any of the other ingredients. In fact, if you're a beginner, I almost recommend doing that just to be safe. So it's not fully worked in. We still want separate butter pieces. It's not like a streusel or anything, but the butter is pretty crumbly. The largest pieces are, I feel like, dime sized. So this is cold whole milk and vanilla. I am actually using whole milk this time and not oat milk, but you can use oat milk if that's what you have. So I'm just gonna push some and start carefully folding this in. And I'm just gonna go until it's nearly all combined. I still have a lot of dry spots, and that's totally okay. The reason why I'm waiting until it's nearly all combined is because we're gonna add our basil and our strawberries. And if this was fully combined, the act of folding that stuff in would overwork the dough. There's very little gluten development, so you wanna work quickly and you want to make sure you're not putting any undue stress on the dough. I'm gonna bring back the strawberries in here. I feel like I probably would normally use a spoon to do this, but my hands are already kind of gross, so I'm just gonna plop them in. You wanna leave any juices behind. You can use it to make lemonade if you want. We are using fresh basil for this recipe. You can use dried basil if you have it. I would not use a 1/4 cup, because this recipe calls for a 1/4 cup of fresh basil leaves. So I don't know how much you would use if you're using dry. I have not tested this with dried. I'm just doing a coarse chop, nothing crazy. Okay, so now that my strawberries and my basil are in here, I'm just gonna give a few more folds in here. I'm like scooping to make sure I get the flour that's stuck at the bottom. I'm gonna turn this out onto a very lightly floured surface. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have here. It's a pile. It's a pile for sure. So we are going to use this chance to lightly press everything together. And I'm just gonna press this into a 7-inch circle that is about 1 inch thick. 7 inches, 7 inches, 7 inches, 1 inch. Ow. It's almost like I've done this before. This makes 8 scones. If you want them to be a little bit bigger, you can cut 6 instead. I'm using a bench scraper here, and I'm just cutting straight into it. So I'm gonna cut this into quarters and then cut each quarter into half and move it to my parchment lined sheet tray. Look at them little guys. They're so cute. So I have my tray here of scones. Like I said, the butter being cold is extremely important. It helps to make a really nice flaky scone, especially since we've been handling it a lot, especially since I use my hands for every step of this. We're gonna throw these into the freezer for like 15 minutes. If you don't have any room in your freezer, throw them into the fridge for like 20 to 25 minutes, just until they're firm. We're just trying to chill the butter back down. I'm gonna throw these in the fridge, I'm gonna clean up, and then I'll come back right before we go to bake. Ta-da! So I've got my chilled scones here. Like I said, they're not like frozen solid or anything, but they are much firmer than they were. So we're gonna wash them. We're gonna apply a wash to the top. You've seen me do egg washes and stuff before, I think. We're gonna do a milk or cream wash this time. Basically, washes have different purposes, and depending on the purpose, depends on what you put in them. If you want something that is like a really deep color and has a really nice shine on the top, you'll do an egg wash, usually what you'd see on like breads. Sometimes if you want to go a step further, you'll see people do extra yolks or only yolks, or they will add salt, and both of those kind of deepen color. What we're doing here is just kind of giving it a nice light color. We want like a nice little bit of color. The sugars in the milk or the cream will caramelize and give you a nice shiny top. I just have some milk here. We're not trying to drench it in anything. We're not trying to get any puddles of cream on the parchment or anything. Sometimes people will do their wash and then they will refrigerate it. You can totally do that. If you are trying to make this ahead, you can do your egg wash and your sugar topping and everything and then refrigerate them for however long you need to wait for. I would not freeze them at that point. Or maybe you're making them at night and you need them that morning for breakfast. You can totally prep them up until this point and then leave them in the fridge and then bake them off the next morning. And then to get a little bit of extra crunch, you know, that added texture, we're gonna put some sugar on top. I like to do anything that has a little bit of extra grit, like turbinado or demerara sugar, or just like some really coarse granulated sugar. It'll give you that like nice crunchy crust. So I've got my oven preheated. It goes in pretty high because, like I said, we're trying to set the dough before the butter melts and then kind of get those crispy layers. So I've got my oven set up for 100, but I'm gonna pop these in and I'll see you back over here once they're all baked. Hi, we're back. I have my scones here. They look really freaking delicious. I'm very excited. They have like a nice light golden color on the top. The strawberries kind of look like tiny little jewels nestled into each scone, and I think they look so good. I'm so excited to try one. I've kind of already busted into this one, so. If you're worried about the basil being too strong, I would not be concerned. The basil has such a nice like afternote almost, like it's something like savory almost that you get to cut through like the sweetness of everything else, and it's just like such a nice backing note to everything. The scones themselves are not overly sweet. You get that nice bright flavor when you bite into one of the strawberries, and they're just so soft and buttery and so good. I am not a huge scone person. I'm gonna tell you right now. Scones are not like the first thing that I usually think of when I want to bake. They're kind of an afterthought or something that I get when I'm out and about. These are not dry. They're not overly sweet. They're full of flavor. They're super buttery and super delicious. And I hope that if you're also not a scone person, maybe you consider trying these. They're the perfect kind of like in season celebration, I guess, of what you can get right now. Yeah, okay, anyway, so that's it. That's all I have for you guys today. Those are my roasted strawberry basil scones. They're perfect for spring. I'll have the full ingredients list and method of prep and everything on my website, which will be linked down in the description below. Let me know if you try them, tag me. I love seeing when you guys make my stuff and when you guys make variations on my stuff. These with like raspberries or blackberries would also be really good if you roast those and then throw them in. Oh my God, a blackberry lemon rosemary scone. That would be so good. Somebody needs to get on that. I'm just saying, somebody needs to make that. I hope that at the very least, this encourages you to try to find where your local market is. I guarantee you, no matter how small your town is, there's probably a farmer's market near you. Stuff is like a little bit more expensive at markets sometimes, but at least then you know that the money that you're spending is going directly to local farmers. Do what you can with what you've got. If anything else, go for the vibes. It's always nice that people watch at a market. I hope you guys are all happy and safe wherever you are in the world. If there's anything you want to see me make this spring or this summer, drop me a line, let me know, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye. Butter chunks in here. I hate that word so much. I don't like talking about butter chunks.